All right. Hey, everybody. We're live. Hope you all are doing good
Mhm,
today. Thanks to anybody checking out this episode live, watching live, or checking out the podcast later. Appreciate you guys so much. I've got an awesome guest with me today, Heather Carter. Heather, so
mhm,
awesome to see you, to have you with me. And this is going to be our second conversation ever. And our first
mhm.
conversation was awesome. And you're super easy to talk to. Awesome to talk to you. Great conversation. And I'm excited about what you're doing and to get into your books and just so many different things about you and your story and just the message of hope that you have for people.
Mhm.
So yeah, thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome. I'm so honored to be able to spend some time with you today. So, yeah, I'm an open book, for better or for worse. So, ask me what you want, and we'll just see where God takes us.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into it. I would love if you could just to start off here, just share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Um, yeah, that's kind of a big question. So, you
Yeah.
might be sorry you asked that question.
Well, let's start with what you
I was
kind of do currently.
born.
Yeah. Let's start with what you do currently, and then we'll get into the backstory,
Yeah,
and we'll go from there. Yeah.
good. Okay, that's good parameters for me. So, I am currently living in Springfield, Illinois. I'm originally from the West Coast and migrated this way for my husband. I followed my husband, my high school sweetheart, to school in Ozark Christian College in Joplin, Missouri, and then he came to Springfield. We moved here so he could go to Lincoln Christian Seminary for his master's,
Mm,
and we intended to go on to Chicago for his doctorate and then move back to California. And here we are in Springfield, Illinois still. He started working at a great church called Hope Church and was the pastor there, the teaching pastor for 20 years. And so in the past 10 years or so, he transitioned into um, kind of the corporate world. So he does that now. And then I am a realtor, which I love doing most of the time, except right now in these I've lost like 4 or 5 deals this last week because of multiple offers, 10 offers on every house, and
wow.
offering like your firstborn child and all kinds of things to try to get a deal done. So it's a little bit frustrating, but um,
Mm,
the nice thing about it is that it allows me to do this kind of thing whenever I want. I don't have to ask permission to get off work. I don't have to I can control my schedule. When I want to go on vacation, I can just go. And sometimes I sell houses while I'm out of town, which is awesome. So anyway, it's just been a really good fit for what I'm doing now. I'm really trying to focus a few days a week on that and then block out Tuesdays and Thursdays to really focus on my book and podcasts and different things like that.
that's so cool. That's so cool. Do you ever, and I don't want to get off topic with this. I'm just curious. So I'm gonna ask you, and then we can kind of move on from it quickly, so we don't
Mhm.
waste too much time. But do you ever, with like what you do with real estate, and then even now, like with your writing, and just a lot of these sort of entrepreneurial things that you do that you're involved in, and just sort of like that mindset of kind of being your own boss and being in
Mhm.
charge of what you do and your life, your schedule, all that. Is that something, have you done any kind of like mentoring with anybody else about kind of, getting into that kind of thing? Just curious, like, is that something that you've gotten into at all?
Yes, I need a whole like team of people really because I I'm the kind of person who thrives on a schedule, but I really hate schedules at the same time. So I am kind of like if someone gives me the opportunity to go to the lake today, I'd probably just be like, yeah, see it, all the things I've planned. Like I like to have fun too. So I really, having no structure is fun for me, but it also makes me get nothing done. So the mentoring thing has been huge. I'd been on several podcasts with a few different men, and they would talk about how they had these calls once a week with each other and kind of sharpened each other in their faith and their physical world and stuff. And I was really jealous because I thought I want to do
Mm,
that, but I know I can't really get on your call. So he connected me with some other women that I did some Zoom calls with. And by the end of that, two of them, one of them, both of them are authors, and are just strong Christian women. And so we now meet every Tuesday morning on a Zoom call and just for a half hour and talk things out and encourage each other, help each other keep going. And so that's been really important. And then another woman I met through, again, through a just connections. Her name is Peggy Bodie. She does
Oh, yeah.
mentoring. Yeah, she does mentoring for women in ministry. And so I had a call with her just to help her have her help me kind of hone what I'm doing. Because right now, especially, I feel like I'm just all over the place. I say yes to everything because I'm not Oprah, just like if you want me on your podcast, I'll talk to you. So I kind of all over the place, but I love doing it. And I just like to talk to people and get that message of hope. And you're not alone in your struggles out there to as many people as possible. I don't really have a target audience other than if you have a soul and you care about it and you're working through anything, then you're my target audience. So it makes it hard to say no to really any opportunity for me.
I see, I see. Have you follow-up question, have you ever ended up on a podcast where you were like, "What am I doing here?" Because it was
Oh
like
my gosh.
because you just said yes?
Yes. Oh, you have no idea. It's actually quite hilarious
We
because,
won't
and
name
my
names,
friends,
but yeah.
yeah, my friends who knew I was getting on them, they're like, what are you doing on that podcast? You have no business. I'm like, yeah, but they all have souls. So eventually we're going to get to the root of it. But when my book first came out in November, the Soul Selfie hashtag no filter is my second book. And I hired a publicist to get me some interviews. And he's basically said, well, you're not Oprah, and you're not that famous. So we'll get you on as much as we can. But then Facebook shut down for the day and
I
everybody
remember that.
freaked out. And
I was
since my
supposed to be
book,
doing a podcast right when that happened, and
yeah,
we ended up getting delayed.
yeah.
Yeah.
So since everybody was talking about that and kind of like their mental health was threatened, some of these people, um,
Mm.
since I have a book called Soul Selfie, it kind of lent itself to him kind of couching these pitches in like, author Heather Carter talks about social media and I don't even know what he said, but something it got me on a lot of podcasts to talk about Facebook like I was an expert.
I
And
see.
so I got on some political shows, which is like I barely know who the president is. It's
That's so
sad.
funny.
So for me to be on any kind of any kind of political show is like got international incident written all over it. So I I just I read through the questions to my friends. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you're going down. That's going to be terrible." I'm like,
You're
"I can
going
do this.
down.
I can do this." So basically, it was just an hour of pivoting and pivoting, and they would say, "Don't you think Facebook is this?" And I'd say, "Well, you know, Doug or whatever his name was. I think the real root of it comes back to that we're finding our identity in the wrong
Mhm.
places." And in my book, Soul Selfie, I just kind of kept trying to turn it back to
Just
that. So
pivoting.
I
Yeah.
was sweating through the whole thing, but it was pretty funny.
That's awesome. That's so
I don't know if
funny.
they ever put it on anywhere or not. I haven't ever tried because I don't really want to put the
You're
whole
like, "Oh,
show
we'll
out
scratch that one." Well,
there.
hopefully they did. Hopefully
Yeah,
they put it out there.
yeah, I hope so too, because it's a different perspective than just let's just all complain and attack. It's trying
Yeah.
to bring some hope and light to the situation.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Have you ever considered doing a podcast of your own, or have you done any podcasting of your
Mhm.
own?
I've done a few interviews with people, and they're on YouTube. It's called Soul Selfie Story
Mhm.
Series. And so I just interview different readers about their favorite post because all my book is a collection of blog posts. So I introduce them and how we know each other, and then they tell kind of a specific post that might have been helpful to them in their life. I'm thinking about turning that into a more regular podcast. But I'm getting ready to launch one probably next month with Bruce
Yes.
Holger called Can I Have a Word with You? I'm so excited about it.
That's
And
awesome.
we're just going to talk about one word for like 15 minutes.
Okay.
And I think it'll be good. Words like, I think the few we've done so far, words like contentment or community. We did a bunch of C words for some reason, and comparison. And so we're starting with those, but I'm looking forward to that.
Love that. Are those gonna be once a week, or how are you doing that?
I think for now, once a week. Yeah. He's kind of like more famous than me. So he's more popular and he's running all over the place doing he's done a TED talk, so he's kind of in this upper, out of my league for sure. So it's more
Mm.
about like tracking him down to do the stories and that kind of thing. So I'm just glad he still wants to talk to me for 15 minutes and let us hash those kinds of things out. So it'll be good, I think.
No, that's great. That's really good. That's really good. Even just as I was getting into your book and the little bit that I've spoken with you on the phone, and just the way your accessibility that you write with, and the way that you do just kind of let people into your life, and even as you started off this podcast, like I'm an open book. I think your personality lends itself to to be a person who I just think you'd be a great podcast host. And I love this medium. I love podcasting as a medium for getting content out. I love whether it's like an interview format or just somebody talking or whatever, but I just think it opens up good dialogue and good space for learning. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I meet somebody like you, that's always one of my questions, like, have you thought about podcasting? Which I'm super, I'm pumped that that's happening.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
My biggest hang up really is, maybe we can talk after, is like the whole learning curve of even getting on a Zoom call for me. When I did those interviews, I did live interviews, I did some TV interviews, which was terrifying. Um,
That's
One of
so
the
cool.
ones I did, I got on there. I didn't know I was going to be on live TV. So I'm in my living room and I pop on, and there's this girl on there. She looks like she's on the Today Show. She's in like a suit and on a
I got the
stool. And then
words going across
there's
the
a,
screen and
yeah, and
stuff.
there's a TV screen behind her, and I'm on it. I'm just like, keep looking at the little camera. Just look at the camera. Don't freak out. Just that was, I didn't ever see, I don't ever really watch to see if they come up afterwards because I'm afraid if I watch myself, I'll probably just never do it again. It's kind of terrifying. Um, but just the technology of it all
Yeah.
is sometimes overwhelming to me. So
Mm,
that's the only thing that keeps me from probably doing more, is just figuring all this stuff out. So I'm
yeah.
doing so much better though.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, everything. With like anything else, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get it, you'll be
Mm-hmm.
totally fine as far as the technology and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And just depending on where you are. I know for me when I started, that was one of those things that was a little bit intimidating because I didn't have anything. Like I had to borrow, like I had a
Yeah.
laptop, but it stopped working. And so I had to borrow. What did I do? I had this, I just remember I was on this like really, really cheap laptop that couldn't really do anything else. Like, you know what I mean? I was just doing audio at the time and I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
doing it live. So I didn't need, anything
Mm-hmm.
fast. And I had to borrow a microphone, and it was just, I was in my closet, recording because the
Mm-hmm.
clothes around you makes for good, you get that kind of, good, it just makes for good acoustics and whatever.
Oh, I didn't think
And
about
so,
that. That's a good idea.
what? Some people I've heard that are actually like that have fairly large audiences, they'll go like underneath a comforter or like a bed sheet. They'll kind of like create
Mm.
like literally like create a tent, and they'll podcast from their bed. Obviously, if you're doing it with video, you can't do that because it'll
Yeah.
look super weird.
Okay. I was like,
But people that just do
oh.
audio and stuff like that, I've seen people that do stuff like that, because you get good sound that way. Anyway, I would just say don't be afraid of
Yeah.
if there's humble beginnings or whatever. And I'm sure Bruce, that you're partnering up with,
Yeah.
has a decent handle on things anyway. But I'm definitely available as a resource if you do have any
Okay.
questions
Cool.
about anything
That.
specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't want to. Yeah. Let's see. We've got a little bit of time, but let's. There's so much stuff that I'm interested in just talking to you about and hearing about. I've been getting into your book, your latest book, as you said, Soul Selfie. Hashtag no filters. It's available. Well, I got it on Amazon. I downloaded the Kindle version on Amazon, but I know you have a website as well. Do you want to just
Mhm.
mention a couple things real quick where people can find your content?
Yes. So my website is just heathercarterwrites.com. And the thing I love about the website is that, first of all, my friend helped me turn it into, it used to look like a kindergartner kindergartner made it. It was just like you pull it up, it just looked like someone is like an essay or something, and she's turned it into something really cool. But one of the things I had her do was there's a spot on there where it says browse by category, and that part I think is so helpful. I just keep adding categories because I think if you scroll through those, if you're having a particularly hard day and you're struggling with resentment and forgiveness and anger, you can go to those categories, and all the blogs I've ever written on those topics will pop up.
It's cool.
And I use them a lot. That sounds weird. I read my own book a lot because every other day, practically, I forget to practice what I preach. So I think I'm reading my book. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. That's what you do, or that's what I believe. Why am I acting like I don't believe this? Or that I'm,
Mm,
why am I so afraid when I know the answers, but sometimes I have to refresh my memory. So I'll go through sometimes and do the same thing and read, all right, Heather, let's get, you know the answers. You've written about this. Let's review. So I
it's
think
really
that's really
cool.
helpful. And my books are on there. There's some interviews. I'm starting to upload those. That's one of my uh, little hiccups in learning all this technology, is getting all my podcasts on there. But yeah, it's helpful. And then my books are on there also. But really, secret, you can read all my blogs for free on there. But sometimes it's nice just to have it in a book format,
Yeah.
by your bedside, since it's a kind of a daily reading thing, you've probably noticed. So it's not, I know a lot of people are like, I'm going to get to your book, or I'm going to take it on my vacation. And I'm like, no, I mean, take it on vacation, but it's not a sit on the beach and read it. It's a,
Mm,
before you go to bed or when you first wake up, grab it, read an entry, underline it. When you finish the book, start over, read it again, because it's
mm.
obviously, I am not comparing my book to the Bible, but you know how when you read the Bible,
Yeah.
sometimes you read a verse and you're like, I don't, doesn't do
Yeah.
anything to you. And then you read it again and you're like, you're at a different place in your life. And all of a sudden it just means the world to you. And that's what I feel like my book does. Depending on where you're at, it might hit you different next year when you read that same post. So,
Yeah. I think that's really cool that you are able to kind of go back to your own stuff and read and be encouraged and remember.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do. I tend to do that too sometimes, and yeah, just to kind of go back because it reminds you of where you are, and it reminds you of what you walked through. It reminds you of what the Lord has kind of led you through your own journey of healing and everything that the Lord has had you
Mm-hmm.
on. So if you would, could you share a little bit about your story and what led you to start writing in the first place?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, so what triggered, I guess, my writing career is in 2015, I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And uh, it was one of the things, I didn't really know what leukemia entailed until I
Mm,
got it. One thing I learned is it really means go immediately to the hospital, do not leave there for 30 days. And
okay.
it's a form of cancer. It's a blood cancer. I also didn't put that together with a cancer, but it's a blood cancer. So the only way you can treat it is to do, like, I think I did maybe a week's worth or more of chemotherapy, 24 hours a day. And then
Wow.
you stay there. It kills everything in your body except for
Yeah.
your soul. And then you have to recover for the next 3 weeks in the hospital. But when I was in there, I got a secondary infection because I had a narrowing in my bowel. And so my white blood cell count got so big that it clogged that up. So I
Wow.
remember saying, I look like I'm going to have a baby. Only I said it, I could barely talk because my stomach was so distended. And I was 45 years old. It wasn't a possibility. And woke up a week later in ICU,
Wow.
intubated.
A week
So,
later.
yeah, so I almost did not make it through that period. My They brought my son home from college because they thought I might die, and
Mm.
I ended up. My husband actually is responsible for saving my life. He did some research and said, what about this Neupogen shot? Can't we do? I read about it. This should boost your immune system. And they said, well, we thought about that, but if there's any leukemia left in her body at all, it could kill her. And we can't do a bone marrow biopsy because basically she's too fat. Her stomach was too big. They couldn't figure that out somehow. I don't really understand
Yeah.
that. But he said, well, how sure are you? They said, like 90% sure it's gone. He said, give her the shot. She's going to die if you don't give her the shot anyway. So they did. And then a couple days later, I woke up. So I always tell him, like, all right, dude, you had your chance. I don't want to hear any whining from you
You
about
had your chance.
anything. Like you could have yanked it like you're starting a mower, but you didn't. So
Mm,
um, but
wow.
at the beginning of that, when I wasn't intubated, we started a blog to update people on the status of my cancer. And because it was so abrupt. I mean, I got tests at 11 in the morning, and by 4 o'clock, they called and told me on the phone that I had leukemia, and they had a bed for me at the hospital, and I needed to go there immediately. So by
Mm.
5 o'clock, I was in the hospital. And on the way there, I remember saying, like, how long do you think I'm going to be here? And he's like, 30 days. Like, pardon? He said, yeah. So, yeah, we started
Mm.
this blog post, and I really just used it to update people. But after I don't know if I don't think I wrote anything before I was in ICU, but after I got out of ICU, I had to stay there another week. And then I went back in another 40 days after that over the next few months. Every 3 weeks, I had to go in for 6 days at a time. So I was in there alone a lot. I would update people myself. And I do a lot of daily readings every day because I have self diagnosed ADD. So I read like Oswald Chambers and Jesus Calling, and everything I read is just like in a short increment because that's all my brain can really
I see.
wrap my head around. So I started just writing things, reflections on what was happening around me, and other people seemed to be encouraged. And so, like, if in my first book, this is my first book, which I love because if you see on there, there's all these pictures. Those are
Oh,
all
cool.
selfies of my doctor and nurses and friends and family during my cancer journey. And my first entry is March 29th. That's in my book. And I was diagnosed with cancer on February 6th. And I
Okay.
got out of the hospital March 1st. So my first one, I guess my point is really is that you don't need to wait till you're not sick with
Wow.
whatever you're sick with to start helping people and encouraging people because we're all sick with something at any given time. I write about common plagues of the heart or the diseases of the soul, like resentment, worry, fear, control, comparison, image management, and all that stuff. And we all have it all the time. But you don't have to wait to get perfect to start helping other people, you know?
Yeah, come on.
So,
Did you have any thoughts about writing like this
yeah.
before you went into that
Mm.
situation where you were in the hospital and battling leukemia?
Um, no, that's really a cool God component to this is that I never wrote one thing that anyone would want to read. I journaled my whole life, but most of my journals, and you're probably familiar with this, every journal entry starts with an apology to God for not having written for like a
Dear
week.
diary, yeah.
I'm so sorry I
I
haven't
apologize
written,
to God for not yeah.
so I
Such a
finally
bad
gave that up
Christian.
because I'm like, this is just making me feel guilty, and that's not what
Yeah.
God wants. So no, I didn't, and so it's a miracle, really, that anything I've written is something people would read. The other cool thing is that the way I write is very specific. I have this little my little iPad here. My mom bought me this iPad when I got in the hospital, and then my friend bought me this where is it keypad.
Uh-huh.
So everything I write, I do on this little iPad. And let's see, there's a picture of me. You can kind of see me with no hair in this picture. Wait, where's my there?
There you go.
My bald head there. Um, but I sit and I usually do my readings, and I have something that's been rolling around in my head. I have blog brain, so I always am looking around. I think we talked about. I kind of view my post as like Seinfeld episode, like it's a show about nothing, but also about everything. So
Mhm.
everything I see, everything I do, I could write a blog about it. My brain just goes that way. So I just sit and write it with no real idea what direction I'm going except for a few nuggets. And then in 45 minutes I'm done, and then I edit it real quick for grammar or spelling and I post it. I don't If it doesn't happen within 45 minutes, it ain't happening. If I have
Yeah.
to go back later that day, it's not going to flow. So it is all done just sitting on my couch. Usually my couch in my living room is where I write.
And, at what point did you know that this was gonna be a book? Because I think your
Mhm,
first book, Soul Selfie, it's, the first 110, 120, something like that
mhm,
of your first blog posts. Had you already written all those, and then it was like a
mhm,
thought that came later, like, "I should put this into a book," or
mhm.
was it somewhere in the middle? When did that sort of transition happen in your mind?
Um, yeah, I wrote all of them were written over a period of time. If I had to write like a whole book the way people write a regular book, that would never ever happen. So that's why I can write one thing and then post it, and then a few days later I'll write another one. I wrote a lot more regularly when I was sick, obviously, because I was in the hospital so much of the time.
Sure.
I'd write 2 or 3 times a week. Now I try to write once a week. So there's still another 50 or 60 posts that are not in a book that are on my site.
Mhm.
But probably the thing that triggered it, I was kind of toying with the idea, and then a friend of mine, Ron Bircher, who passed away this last year from cancer. He
Hmm.
was 80 years old at the time, or more, and he is like he's been a Christian for a long time, very wise, mature, spiritual man. And he is the one that connected me with an editor of his son was an author. And he said, I have this editor. I think you should put your stuff in a book. And he would always read my posts, but he couldn't really access social media. So he would have his secretary print it off and like put it on his desk.
Okay.
So, you know, that's why I also think about your target audience. Like, yeah, I speak to women a lot, but also the person who inspired me to do this was an 80-year-old man who read it every time I wrote. So I think it's pretty crosses over.
Yeah. So you mentioned that, something that you write a lot about are diseases of the soul, and you mentioned some of those like fear, worry,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, that desire, that feeling of that need to be in control, comparing yourself to other people, all these different things that as you said, on some level, I think everybody battles with.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that I'm just curious, like what was your journey like with some of those things, all those things, I don't know, but like as you were in the hospital and as you were, going through, getting that initial diagnosis of leukemia and all the just craziness and confusion and just sort of that initial storm that you were in and walking through that, of course, having a husband and having kids and, not
Mm-hmm.
knowing what the future was going to hold. What was that like for you in terms of, any kind of fear that came with that, or, just that uncertainty? What was that like for you kind of walking through that process?
Um, I don't think when I first started writing, I intended it to have any topics to it or anything. They just started writing, and then a little bit in, like I said, I'm kind of technologically challenged. A few blogs in, I'm like, hey, there's these category options over here. Maybe I will put them in there.
Mm.
But I realized there was a strong pattern of the same kinds of signature sins that I battle that kept popping up with control. It was funny, actually, in my second book, I had my husband read it to help me edit, and he finished, and he's like, I said, how was it? He's like, it's fine. And I'm like, why are you looking at me like that? He said, I didn't realize you have a real problem with control. It's like pretty serious.
Wow.
It's like every other post is about being control and giving up control and letting it go and letting it go. And so I'm like, yeah, I know, but I don't think I'm the only one. So I'm going to keep writing about it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
The
those
difference
things
is
help
that
me.
sorry to interrupt you. The difference is
Yeah.
that you're honest about it,
Yeah.
and and that you write about it from a perspective of, "Hey, guys, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm battling with.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk to you about what I'm going through in my journey, and I hope that it helps you." And
Yeah.
I think that that's a really interesting and, unique thing that, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people would talk about those things, and I think I think what often happens is that we tend to talk a lot about the things that we struggle with the most. And it's like the things that we kind of, um, the things that we kind of battle with, and we wanna talk about those things because we want to encourage other people. It's like we know so much about them, but at the same time, it's if there's, like, still an ongoing struggle there, I think that oftentimes those are the things that we tend to talk about a lot, and I
Mhm.
just think it's very cool and refreshing that you, do share the way that you share, in that, again, just kind of in that way that's accessible and letting people into your situation and kind of seeing just kind of through your eyes, and you just being open and honest about your struggles and the fact that, hey, look, I've got to depend on God for every moment of my life, and I'm in
Yes.
that boat with you.
Yeah.
It's refreshing.
Well, I appreciate that. I wasn't always that way, so that's why I think, especially my friends now see me in a different way that I is refreshing to them also. For 20 years, I was a pastor's wife, and I feel like I didn't definitely didn't try to act like I had it 100% together, maybe like 75% together. And so a lot of my sharing at that juncture was based on, oh, well, a month ago I was really struggling with this. And so I did A, B, and C, and now I'm all better. Ta-da,
Yeah,
do what
yeah.
I did, and here I am. I'm all better now. And that no one really cared. No one wanted to hear that.
Mm,
And it made it intimidating, I think, to my friends as well, because I wasn't real open with my real struggles, because I felt like I had to be this Christian example as a pastor's wife, so they should never know that I wanted to run that girl over with my car today when I saw her. So today, well, actually, one of the things I did that happened in the hospital is I really sensed God saying to me, Heather, you are a full time job and you got some things to work on. So let's just flip that camera back around that's and take a selfie of your own soul. Let's work on that. And then you can use things you learn and your brokenness to share that with other people and encourage them. You go through what you go through to help others get through what you went through. And so now I try to remind myself that I write in the messy. So when I go to
mm,
school and see that girl, like I'm using this example because I really did almost want to just run this person over. There was a really mean person that went to my kid's school and had done wrong by me and my family in many ways. And so, I would drop my kids off and I'm just like, there she is. I could just accidentally, I would not run over big, just like, her toe or something. So, like, I would go home and write about that. Like, today I felt this mad and this
mhm,
hurt, and it's not over.
mhm.
Um, I write about resentment and forgiveness a lot because you have to take people off the hook every single day. And maybe sometimes, then eventually, maybe you only have to do it once a week. And that's the progress. I'm never going to probably get to the end of it all, but there's definitely I'm making progress, just like they say, progress, not perfection and everything. So when I start to believe the lie that I have nothing to say this week because I, um, I've been, in my mind, I've been behaving badly in some way, or I haven't been trusting God, or I've been, whatever, that I realize, oh man, I better start writing because this is
Mm,
what I'm supposed to write about.
yeah,
People want to know that I'm struggling today. They don't want me to wait till I'm got it together. That's
yeah,
why they read my book. So
yeah.
that's hard to remember because I feel like not worthy to write. And then I'm like, oh wait, I'm really worthy today to write about how I messed up.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's a cool perspective.
Mhm.
You mentioned in your book, I remember reading that you were saying that when you started writing while you were battling leukemia, that it was a cathartic, thing for you to
Mhm.
do. It was this cathartic experience for you to write. I think that that's true for a lot of writers, especially in the early stages. Would you say today it's the same kind of thing, or has that evolved, or what would you say that writing does for you today on a personal level? Beyond, I know that you wanna bless others and you wanna do all of
Mhm.
that, but on a personal level, what would you say that
Mhm.
the effect that writing has for you today, for your own mind?
Yes, and that's so important for me to keep reminding myself of because I get busy and I get stressed out, so I don't write. And then eventually I do sit down and write. And when I'm done, I just can feel the stress and tension leaking out of my body. It's like, oh, that's why I was so probably in knots, because I hadn't reasoned it out on, I have to reason it out through my fingers with God. I don't
Mm.
know why that is, but once I start typing, I get clarity. And if I don't do that, I just get all knotted up. So once I start writing and I'm done, I also have that sense that, you know what, I'm doing a bunch of stuff with my book and a bunch of stuff in real estate, and but this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So once I finish writing that, even if I haven't posted it, I'm like, all right, I did what I needed to do today. If I don't do anything else, I'm good. It
Yeah.
just heals my heart.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. One of the things, that's really interesting to me is that when I'm sitting down to write and I'm writing, in my mind, I'm thinking about, like, "Okay, Lord, like, let's write this," and I'm thinking about the people, right? Like, I'm thinking about, "I wanna write this because I want this to be impactful to people." And I'll be writing about things that I've experienced, and I'll be writing about things that I feel like I know to an extent that I have some level of just understanding or authority on or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's just really, really interesting to me how the Lord loves us so much that even in that process where we're essentially doing something out of obedience because we want this to be a blessing to other people, that within that, as I'm writing, I'll find that He's bringing up, it's like these things are being illuminated in my mind,
Mhm.
where I'm seeing a different aspect of something. And so whereas I'll start writing from this place of I know this about God, or I know this about myself, or I've experienced this or whatever. So often I'll find myself writing in this place where I'm kind of like bringing up my own brokenness out in my
Mhm.
writing, and where I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'm not as good at this as I thought, or maybe I'm not as perfect as in this as I thought, or maybe there's these other areas that God still wants me to grow in that I haven't yet. And so that's often what writing is for me. It's that sort of, it helps to kind of seal things in me that the Lord has been
Mhm.
doing. And also it also serves as this tool that I think that God uses to kind of highlight those areas within me that need his attention, and that for whatever
Mhm.
reason I've got a blind spot to, or whatever. So I'm
Yeah.
always curious about, what that's like for writers, in general.
Yeah. I know. And it sounds weird to even say I'm a writer, because I don't think of myself as a writer per se, but because it just doesn't, like I
Do
said,
you do
nothing
you
I ever
write,
wanted
Heather?
to do.
Do you write, Heather?
No,
Your
apparently I
website is
do.
up
It
on the screen right
says
now, and it's called
write something.
heathercarterwrites.com.
Then
I'm
it could
pretty
be,
sure
it should be Heather Carter writes dot dot dot, and let other people just fill in that blank. She writes like crap. She
Heather Carter
writes.
pretends to be a writer. No, I think you can get over that one. I think, you're a writer. That's just, yeah.
I just try to write like I would talk, and I didn't ever want to write, but I have always had these. Um, I notice things around me that formulate these stories. But the problem is, I would try to tell people this story, and by the time I get to like the punchline of it, they've lost interest. So
Mm,
because I try to give, I always want to give, set the story up, because that part is so important to me. So by the time I set up the whole thing, they're like moving on, they don't want to hear anymore. So the blog gives me a chance to set up that backstory, because that, if you read my blog, you'll notice like there is, a couple, 2 or 3 paragraphs of the setup, and then all of a sudden it lends itself to a lesson of some sort. um, so I try to, in my writing, I think, encourage people to invite God into the trauma, drama, and minutia of everyday
mm,
life, because the trauma, of course, most people turn to God in trauma. Drama, relationship stuff. I always hear my friends saying, you got to get God in there, and put, when you're having a conversation with someone, put God between you and that other person, and just pray that He filters the words that you say, so that they hear it the way He needs them to hear it, and vice versa. Things like that. That those are the
yeah.
drama things, and then the minutia, because 80% of our day is minutia. So some of the stuff I write about is like a Seinfeld episode. Like, I have a blog about squirrels, because I was offended that these squirrels were playing in the neighbor's yard and they used to play in my yard. And it's about taking, But in that I learned, you're taking things personal that have nothing to do with you. And how often do we do that? People
Wow.
are grouchy at us and we take it personal. Like, that's not about you. It was about the
Mm,
fight they just had with their spouse before they left their house. Um, in cancer, I learned things like treat everyone like they have cancer, because I'll tell you what, people used to say that like negatively, like, oh my gosh, they treated me like I had cancer. Like, yeah, you want to be treated like you have cancer. It's way better. People are so much nicer when you have no hair. When I used to go to the store, people would stop short of, like, the grocery store lady would be like, you have a good day, and squeeze my
yeah.
hand and wipe a tear from her eye. And
Aw.
now when I go through, they're like,
Next. Yeah.
and next, they don't care. Um, but the reality is we're all sick with something. So
Wow.
everyone around us has probably just left a situation that is hard. People have really hard stuff going on. And if we can not take it personal and just pray for the people that are grouchy, because gosh, what's going on that they have to treat a stranger terribly? What happened to you? What is happening to you now? And treat them like they're sick, maybe we would all get along so much better. So things like that. I just try to give people a different perspective on the
Mhm.
everyday grind.
That's huge. That sort of being able to empathize with people and being able to honor people where they are, again, without knowing their full situation. So often we can just get so pissed off at somebody while we're in line at the grocery store because they're moving slowly or
Mhm.
whatever. And who knows? Maybe they're just a slow moving person and maybe they really are out there to try to destroy your whole day. Probably not though. Like maybe they've got something going on in their life. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like you never know, like who just got a piece of bad news, or who's afraid that they might lose their job, or who's got a
Right.
family member suffering with cancer, or they themselves might have something going on physically. And we don't know. And I think that if we as we just kind of walk through life, we can have a tendency to just kind of steamroll people, to blow past people. I do remember reading one of your blog posts where you were talking about the importance of being in the moment, and like not like being with one friend but thinking about the problem that another friend of yours is dealing with. Not that that's any
Mhm.
less important, but because of
Right.
the moment that you're in right now, being able to focus on where you are. And I've been talking about this a lot lately. It just comes up a lot. It's something that I'm trying to get better at, is just being present with people in my life, whether I'm talking about my kids, my wife, my friends, or people that I
Mhm.
don't even know, but I get like the opportunity to interact with them for 30 seconds in the store, or
Mhm.
2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. And just kind of making time for people, and allowing people to feel, just like doing whatever you can, to even going out of your way a little bit to dignify a person who's in front of you.
Mm.
Again, when it's so easy to just blow past people and go on to the next thing. And
Yeah.
I think if we could all learn to live that way, and to recognize that like none of these other people have it all together, and they've all got issues in their lives of what as well. And so maybe that's why that person was a jerk to me, because they're just battling their own stuff right now. And so
Mhm.
maybe I should be a little bit more concerned about the individual than about how they made me feel.
Right. Yeah. I have a phrase that we use a lot, as that I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. Like, even though we're just so ego centered,
Wow,
I
that's
call that
really good.
edging God out. It's all about me. Even though I don't like myself most of the time, I still think about myself all the time. And we think everyone else is thinking about us and
Wow.
everything's about us. I mean, it's a pandemic of that, I would say.
Mm,
And if we're doing it and we're Christian people trying to spread God's love, shoot, why everyone's going to be worse than that, because they're not even trying. We're trying. We're still just thinking about ourselves most of the
yeah.
time.
Yeah, absolutely. Whew. I know we're a little bit up against the clock, and we're gonna have to call this thing to a close here. But I did want to ask you something else that I was just reminded of. I read I read where you were talking about how you've got this list of bad words, and one of
Oh
the
yeah.
words on your list, one of the words on your list is I just saw a lot in common in this area.
Mm.
I don't have a list of bad words, but you talked
I'll
about
send you some if you need some.
yeah. What are the bad words? No. So you have this word where you were talking about the word figure.
Mm.
And so that's an F word right there. But
Yeah.
you've got this word figure and related to figure, figure it out, figuring it out.
Mm.
That's something that I
Mm.
resonated with so well. It's something that comes up in my life a lot. And so often we're God's kids, and he's always there for us. He's with us, he's in us, he's around, like he's everywhere that we need him to be, and he's everything that we need him to be. But so often I just think that we get into those anxious moments and we
Mm.
try so hard to figure it out.
Mm.
And would you just share, I know again we're out of time here, so I might be shooting you in the
Yeah.
foot, but just a thought or two about what that word figure means to you.
Yeah. Well, it really is, again, it comes back to my signature sins of one of them is control. I mean, that's what it is. Like, I'm going to be in charge of this. And as a realtor, I'm negotiating things all day long. It makes my head spin. And,
Mm,
we're going to figure this out. We're going to figure this out. And that's one of the things. I go to a recovery group for family members of people who struggle with addictions. And that's one of the things is we learn all the time is to give it to God and give it to God and give it to God. And when we start saying we got to figure it out, um, it usually means we're trying to get our will in there and not turning
yes.
it over. And I definitely err on that. Like, oh, I'll just do it until I can't anymore, and then I'll give it to you, as
Yep.
opposed to just turning it over and letting Him guide me in that process. So, I don't. Did you read my other one? One of my favorite ones. I don't remember what it's called, but it's called On Cussing.
I haven't gotten to that one yet.
Yeah, that's a good one because it basically talks about how I had a woman come to my house when I was a pastor's wife and accuse me of saying that I felt like crap, only not saying that. And
Hmm.
like, I'm not a cusser. I can't use it in this sentence. It's, if anything, it would be like an expletive if I stub my toe, or maybe if
Yeah.
I'm on a roller coaster. That one is like, what you say on a roller coaster stays on a roller coaster. But um, she was accusing me of this, and I try to defend
Yeah.
myself because I'm like, I know I didn't say that because that's just not how I talk. It's not, they're not really judging those words. I'm just saying that's just not how I talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sure that's maybe a rumor. But afterwards, I was so mad. I thought, I can't believe I defended that, because I thought, um, you know, I I don't believe, obviously, I'm not condoning just be a potty mouth, but I also believe that you can say darn it with the same angst as
Absolutely.
you can say any other word. And the only word that God hurts God's heart is when we use his name in vain.
Hmm.
And when we use even saying, oh my God, I don't ever do that. Like, I remember my son when he was a baby. I mean, he barely could talk, and we wouldn't let him say "gosh" because it was too close to God. And so I walked in his room one time to get him out of his crib, and he looked right at me and said, "I want to say gosh, Mom." Like, we'd said don't say gosh so much to stay away from using God's name frivolously that he was obsessing about it. But I think that, God, using God's name without considering who he is and his power in any way hurts him. But
Mm.
none of those other words are hurting God unless our hearts are hurting God. And your words that you say are not causing that. It
Yeah.
starts deep in here. So anyway, I love that one, just because, probably because I've been waiting to say that out loud in some public forum because of that person that came to my house and accused me of saying I felt like shit. So just doesn't now. Actually,
That
I've
just
been
felt
going
good.
to,
That just felt
yeah,
good to say. Yeah, it's one of
we've
those.
been going to recovery
Yeah.
programs for a while, so we've kind of learned a little bit better how to cuss if we need to, but we don't use that regularly. We just, it's, you got to start deep in here with whatever you say.
Yeah. Yeah, you could put a ton of, like, bad intent behind calling somebody a jerk or something
Hmm.
like that, and then as you said, like, you stub your toe and accidentally, like, some expletive comes out,
Yeah.
and, like, people will, like, be all condemned and beat up over that, or
Yeah.
someone will, like, judge you because, like, "Oh, you're supposed to
Mhm.
be a Christian," and you said, "Well, look, sometimes sometimes that's the best word that I
Yeah.
could come up with, is
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it, it just flew out or
Yeah.
whatever," but, like,
You
Yeah,
need
I
that
think a lot of the
T-shirt. Have
judgy
you
stuff
seen
that goes
that?
on.
That T-shirt they make. It says, "I love Jesus, but I cuss a little."
I haven't seen that.
Yep, it's pretty funny. I have a couple
Sounds
friends I
sounds a
might
little
buy
bit like
that
me
for,
though, I guess. Yeah, I could relate. Well, Heather, I know you gotta run. Just in case, I'm pretty sure you said it out loud earlier, but just in case we didn't, and anybody is listening to this worried about you, you are cancer free,
yes, I am.
right?
Yep, I am cancer
Um,
free. With leukemia, this is gonna sound crass probably, but you're either done or you're dead if you have AML. Like you don't live very
wow,
long if you're not done with AML. So
that's heavy.
um, within the first year or maybe two, you will know. It doesn't usually come back after the first year and a half or so. So I've been good for a while. Um, Actually, February 6th was 7 years from when I got diagnosed. So that's kind of the birthday I use to celebrate being cancer free. But
Mm,
yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
I also do want to say, so maybe we can do another little
Yeah,
chat sometime and
we're
go in.
gonna have to.
Yeah, we got like maybe we'll just start our podcast. That'll be
Yeah,
fun. We'll talk
yeah,
about that.
that'd be cool too.
We have some things to ground to cover, but I will say if someone does happen, we can talk about this in the future, but if someone does happen to get my book and enjoy it, I've done, I'm starting to kind of do some books. I've done some book studies with it, and I'm thinking about starting some where I come on for the first one and kind of tell everyone how it goes and tell my story and then let them use it as a book study. So that's something that I'm open to if people want to reach out to me. My contact stuff's all on my website and everything.
Awesome,
So
awesome.
I'd love to be a part of that.
Love it. Well, I'm definitely down for a round two at some point. We'll
Mhm.
set that up. I know we've got so much more that we can talk about.
Yeah.
But for real, congratulations on your books, on the new podcast that's coming out soon. On that too, if you would, when it launches, if you'll let me
Mhm.
know, I'll definitely support that in any way I can and share it out and stuff like that. So just let me know and I'll be all over that. But yeah, but
Awesome.
congratulations on everything. I'm so stoked that you're still alive and that God is so good
Yeah.
and that you're still here with us. And shout out to Stacy for setting up our initial contact and kind of, putting us together to have a conversation. And it's super cool to get to know you. I appreciate you, appreciate your time, and for real, appreciate the message of hope that you have for
Thank
people.
you.
So thank you.
Good. All right. Thanks, Duke. Let's do it again.
Yeah, please. Thanks,
All right.
everybody. Thanks for joining and checking out this episode. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day and see you next time.